Mr. Chairman.
You may begin, Mr. Neese.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I'll step out for the moment to go check the box before we get to public comment, probably while you're having your moment of silence, and I'll be back at that time.
Okay.
So, but I wanted to go ahead and get us started.
Yes, please.
Let me just, yep. Yes, we have, we're ready to start the meeting. We will be taking public comment in one of 4 ways tonight. You can drop your comment off in the blue drop box at the entrance of the Township building, and I will be checking that in a moment. You can raise your hand while in the meeting and you'll be recognized as we've been doing in the past. If you phoned in, there is an option on the Zoom meeting to let you raise your hand as well on the phone. If by chance you're having trouble with that, you could send your name and the phone number in which you called in to this meeting to publiccomment@newtowntownship.org. Again, that's public comment, all one word, @newtowntownship.org. At that point, we would review, or we would know that you wanted to speak and we would recognize you. You can also send an email to publiccomment@newtowntownship.org and we would read that into the record. That's the instructions for the public comment. Turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Neese. The board was in executive session prior to this meeting. My apologies for going over, but we had 4 different legal matters to discuss and some personnel matters to discuss. So unfortunately, it was a long session. So I appreciate everybody sticking with us, and we will get started. So we're going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to ask Mr. Neese to do the roll call.
Yes, Mr. Nawn.
Present.
Mr. Partridge. He's
Here.
muted. Ms. Roberts-Lycat.
Here.
Mr. Russo.
You're muted, Mike.
Oh, okay. I see him.
I'm here.
Mr. Altieri.
Here.
Okay. Your engineer, solicitor, and manager are here.
Thank you, Mr. Neese. For this evening's moment of silence, this is our last public meeting before the general election. A week from tomorrow, we'll all be voting. Tonight, let's pray for peace and civility, recognizing that we all have views, we all have opinions, and each vote counts. Our country is founded on the ability for people to go cast their vote without intimidation, without coercion, without anything there. So let's recognize that we all have a vote to count. Let's all recognize that our vote is valid no matter which way we vote. And let's just keep in our prayers and thoughts a plea for civility and peace so that we can all get through this and then move on afterwards. So if you please bow your head. All right, I see Mr. Neese is not back, but we can still continue. And I'm sure he'll catch up. So I'll delay a few more minutes. We'll dance, we'll see. All right.
I'll fill up that space if you want. You know, I always can fill up a space. But to your point about the, the general election being on next Tuesday, and every vote counts, just in case the residents haven't seen it yet, but our ballot box, our secure ballot box was installed at the Township building located out front next to the handicap ramps. The county has installed their 24-hour surveillance, and that is being streamed through the cloud right over to them. So the box was installed on Friday. The camera was installed on Saturday and went operational Saturday, and the ballot box opened up on Sunday. So residents can begin to deposit their ballots securely and safely in the ballot drop box. Again, one of the reasons for this is because of the large number that Delaware County suspected that they would be processing. As of Friday, over 150,000 ballots have been issued out. So I know a lot of residents were getting another batch, or the county was sending out another batch Thursday and Friday. So I'm actually happy that we have this ballot box because, you know, the delay that it took for the county to go through everything. And then also there are ballots that are missing, right? Individuals aren't getting theirs delivered because the mail is either delayed or it's just taking forever. My parents requested it the first week of October and just got theirs on Saturday. So it's a good resource that we did here for Newtown Township, and happy to see democracy moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Altieri. We will count that as your board comment under item 19, so appreciate that.
And I'll add to that board comment at the
No,
time.
no, Mr. Neese is back. We're going to move on. Next on the agenda is approving this evening's agenda. I'll entertain a motion for approval or consideration of any changes or deletions or additions.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lafiata to approve this evening's agenda as written. Any further comments, questions, discussions from members of the board on that item? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 7 on the agenda is public comment for agenda items only. I believe there's no comments that were in the mailbox. Am I correct, Mr. Neese?
That is correct.
I don't think we've received any comments in on the other means. If there are folks in the audience that would like to comment on the agenda items at this point, raise your hand and be recognized. Again, this is for comment for items that are on the agenda only. I see no hands raised. So we will move on. Next on the agenda is minutes. We had published and we received copies of the minutes from our last meeting. I'll entertain a motion for approval of those minutes or consideration of any additions, changes, deletions.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lafiata to approve the minutes as presented. Any further questions or discussions from members of the board? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda, we have a couple of presentations. The first one is a presentation from our fire company by Chief Doug Everlof. So I think at this point, I will turn it over to Mr. Neese or Mr. Everlof or however we're going to do this. Steve, you're on mute. He's apparently talking to somebody else.
Large cheese pizza.
Oh, okay, you're just under one. Okay, I've promoted you. Sorry, I was on the phone with Doug trying to figure out where he was. And so he's in with Tina.
Okay.
So they're coming on together. And there they are. All right, and while they're doing that, let me pull them up. Pull up their presentation.
Oh, something's happening.
All right. Doug and Tina, you're muted. There you go.
Muted now, Steve.
All right.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Doug Everlof. I'm the fire chief of Newtown Square Fire Company. I have Tina Heffernan, who is our president. Thank you for allowing us to speak with you tonight and just kind of give you a little background on the fire company and what's happening in our world. So this picture really speaks a lot to who we are and what we do. All these pictures that you see are from this year. So you can kind of see some of the activity that we've experienced over the last 10 months. It's been busy a couple months, so we don't anticipate anything really changing as time goes on. But Steve, if you could go to, actually go to the next slide after this. So this is the mission statement of the fire company. I'm not going to read it to everybody, but I just want to speak to our mission statement. So this is a mission statement that we developed back in 1992. And it really speaks to, who we are. It defines who we are, and it defines really the level of service that we provide to the community on a 24/7, 365 basis. So our whole presentation really kind of centers around our mission statement as a fire company. So Steve, you can go to the next slide. So this is just kind of an overview of our presentation for this evening. We're going to discuss about our organization, who we are. We have kind of broken up into two: operations and the business side. We'll talk about the volunteer members, our effective procurement process, and fiscal responsibility and financial support. You can go to the next slide, Steve. So this is overall our organizational structure within the fire company. So on the top, you have the line. So that's our operational side. They're the boots on the ground people, the fire chief, the deputy chief, and the assistant chief. We are elected by our peers within the fire company. So we have training requirements in order to hold those positions. And it's fairly stringent. And the reason why we do that is we want to make sure that we are providing the best level of protection to our community. So underneath, you'll have lieutenants, captains, engineers, fire police, and so forth. Those officers are appointed by the 3 chief officers. And generally, we do a 1 to 2 year term with those folks. But I'll let Tina talk a little bit about the business administration side.
Good evening, everyone. As you can see on the slide, we have a president, 2 vice presidents, and a board of directors. Underneath this, we also have multiple committees that take care of different functions here at the firehouse. So that's just a brief outline. Like any business, we do have an organizational structure. The line officers that Doug just talked about, they run and they're in charge when there's any type of fire call or emergency. On the business administration side, they run all the other activities of the fire company or any business, just as any business would, when there's not an emergency going on.
Cool. Next slide, Steve. So I'm going to talk a little bit, both me and Tina will kind of team up on this one. So recruiting and retention. So obviously recruiting and retention, that's one of our biggest assets as far as people is concerned, but it's also a challenge for us. On the recruiting side, it's always an ongoing process. We recruit through our website, we recruit through social media, word of mouth. We have a lot of members that kind of spread the word to their friends, family members. We have a lot of family members that join the organization. And it's really, we really want to create like a family type atmosphere here. So, but I don't want to discount that there's a huge time commitment to be a volunteer member. And that's going to kind of bounce into the training aspect. So when we talk about training for a new member, so for a firefighter that's coming into the organization, is at a minimum for basic fire, 188 hours of training. That is a huge time commitment for anybody that's coming into the organization. We just recently had a dentist that went through the basic fire training. And with COVID-19 and everything that's going on in his life, it took him about a year to get through that whole entire process. So there's a lot involved with the training process. But in addition to the training that these members receive at a certified training institution like Bucks County or Delaware County or Chester County, Montgomery County Training School, we also hold in-house training. We usually perform our in-house training on the first and third Mondays of the month. So there's always something going on at the firehouse on a Monday night. First and third Monday is training. Second Monday is our meeting night. Fourth or fifth is a work night, or we'll find something to do for the members. So there's always something going on Monday nights, and we always welcome, residents come up and visit us. However, with COVID-19, we're trying to frown upon that right now until we kind of get through this pandemic. As far as the retention side, as far as additional training, so we go through a lot of specialized training. So basic fire training doesn't teach us how to perform vehicle rescue. It doesn't teach us the basics of hazmat operations. So there are additional classes that our members have to take in order to become certified. We don't just respond to just house fires or fire alarms. We get vehicle accidents. We get emergency medical assist. We basically run the gamut as far as emergency response is concerned. To kind of give you an idea as far as the emergency response side is, so last year we did roughly 800 calls last year. This year I believe we're at 612, 613 for the year. So really we're on pace for what we hit last year as far as call volume. And as I mentioned, the hazmats are on the uptake. We might have been to a certain Board of Supervisors resident recently for a little oil spill in the basement, home heating fuel. But we also do EMS assist. When the primary ambulance, I'm sorry, Leonard. When the primary ambulance is out of town, our members, where we get called to assist and provide first response services to the community when the EMS is coming from a distance, to make sure that we do get some type of patient care there within a timely manner. So 65% of our calls are during the daytime hours. That's a huge disparity between the daytime calls, and that's between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. So a lot going on during the daytime. The remaining percentage is really during the off hours, during the evening and overnight hours. But in order to really meet that challenge, we have to bring on supplemental staff, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit, but I'll turn it over to Tina for the non-emergency.
Thank you. As far as non-emergency activities, the fire company strives to be a good community partner, not only to recruit volunteers, but also let our neighbors know what we do as an organization. In an effort to engage the community, we do various activities with a focus on education, especially during October for fire prevention. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do it this year because of COVID, but typically our members try to visit every school in our district. So literally that takes almost every day of the month in October from Monday to Friday while the schools are in session to make sure we visit all the daycares, the preschools, and the elementary schools in Newtown Square. We have our annual Santa rides, which we love doing as much as I hope the township residents enjoy seeing it. We truly appreciate the community at large participating in our fundraisers, such as the Pints in the Square fundraiser, the flea market, the flower sales. It's a chance for us to be out there meeting members of the community and chat with them about what we do and why we need the financial support. This year, because of COVID-19, we've had some unusual special events. We did over 50 drive-by parades with the fire trucks to celebrate birthdays and graduations until the end of June when the restrictions started to be lifted. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, like Doug said, we've been working hard to keep the volunteer members as well as the public safe because our volunteers need to be healthy to be able to respond to emergency calls 24 hours a day. Our main focus has been to keep our station closed to non-members. specifically just in an effort to keep contamination to a minimum so that we don't risk infecting one of our members who then spreads it inside the firehouse and we all take it home to our families. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to welcome people to our new station very soon.
Next slide, Steve.
As far as effective procurement, I wanted to talk a minute about the new fire station. I think everyone knows by now that we moved into a new station located in the Ellis Preserve. Our new address is 2 Charles Ellis Drive. Of course, with transitioning to this outstanding new location, that also comes with a very large mortgage. The fire company, for the first time in many decades, now has a mortgage to repay because of this building. A common misconception we have heard from citizens is that this building was paid for by the township. That is incorrect. The fire company took out loans to build this facility. We had $2 million saved up. We've been in existence for 104 years. And luckily we had $2 million in reserve that we had saved to put as the down payment towards construction. And we have loans for almost $3 million to repay on the station. Needless to say, it is our biggest challenge going forward. As far as station maintenance, the house, building, and equipment maintenance, we always budget for some building and equipment maintenance annually. Hopefully with the new facility, we have a few years before we have to do major upkeep. As far as information technology, we did purchase a new computer system when we moved to this station, which pleased our IT members who volunteered to take care of this for us greatly because they told me I left the 1990s at the old station. This was, unfortunately, we had to do it because the age of our previous system and the fact that the computers we owned were no longer being supported by software. So the major purchase had to be made when we transitioned over here.
Thanks, Dennis. So on the vehicles, so in the past, the fire company has always purchased our vehicles out of our capital expenditures or capital budget. Recently, and I'll go back, the last truck that we purchased, which was our engine in 2016, cost us approximately $686,000. So, and that was for just a basic fire engine that has a pump that carries hose and is capable of transporting 6 firefighters to a fire. We're happy to report that the township, the Board of Supervisors, voted to approve purchasing a new ladder truck for us. The purchase was made this year. We should take delivery of the new ladder truck in 2021 at a price of roughly $1.3 million. Now, we've always had a replacement plan for our apparatus, and this replacement plan came from a study that we had done by VFIS back in 2007. And the replacement plan, and it wasn't something that we just kind of pulled out of the sky. It was something that was recommended by these professionals, which was an engine would be replaced every 15 years. A rescue. Our rescue is, we call it a squad. It's a combination of an engine that can put out fires, and it also carries vehicle rescue equipment and hazmat equipment so we can handle our basic vehicle accidents and hazmat incidents. So that's on a 15-year replacement cycle. Whereas the ladder, we stretch that out another 5 years for a 20-year replacement cycle. And then when we come to our ancillary equipment, like our utility, our traffic unit, and our command vehicles, that's on a needed basis. But generally, we're able to get 10 plus years out of those vehicles. So they see a little bit more use than the typical fire trucks do. We maintain our apparatus. We have an engineering staff that is appointed by the fire chiefs, and the engineering staff basically oversees all the fire apparatus, its maintenance, and when we need to call in the experts, the SMEs, to really kind of work on some of the bigger issues that we run into these fire trucks. With today's technology, there's so much technology built into them that even a simple change in the oil is a lot more difficult than it used to be with your basic fire truck. So as far as the equipment is concerned, Obviously, every piece of equipment has a lifespan to it. When we look at our turnout gear, our SCBA, they all have lifespans to it. Turnout gear's roughly 10 years, whereas a SCBA is on a 20-year replacement cycle. We're coming up on our 20-year replacement cycle for our SCBA right now. We've submitted 3 grants and still have been unsuccessful in obtaining grant money to replace those SCBAs. So that's something that we seriously need to take a look at. As far as replacement, we're probably going to look at seeing what type of bulk purchase we can do with some of our neighboring fire companies to hopefully help cut down on the cost of that. So there's obviously that wear and tear on the equipment, the hose, our nozzles, some of the extraneous equipment that we carry on the apparatus. So, that's replaced as needed. And there's most people don't understand, like a lot of our equipment has to be certified every single year. So our fire pumps, our ground ladders, our aerial on our ladder truck has to be certified every single year. There's maintenance on our SCBA fill stations. Our SCBA had to be flow tested. Our bottles need to be hydrostatically tested every 5 years. So there's a lot of cost built into just running this organization from an operational standpoint, trying to maintain the equipment and make it service ready when that pager goes off. So, and obviously, we look at technology. We're always struggling to keep up with our neighbors down the street, up the street. Everybody's got new technology and everybody wants to have the best. Everything comes with a price. We understand that. So we make those educated and responsible decisions when we're purchasing our equipment. On the paid staff, we have supplemental staffing during the daytime hours. We have paid staffing. We have roughly 20 paid personnel that are part-time that will basically supplement our volunteers during the daytime. As I mentioned, we run 65% of our calls are during the daytime. So these folks, we have 2 that work 6 to 6, Monday through Friday. And then we have a power shift, we'll call it, that works at 7 to 3, and that's on Monday through Friday. So a lot of those men and women are full-time or paid firefighters from outside the area, so they bring a lot of their experience to the job. So we really appreciate that. They help us with really training a lot of our newer members and kind of bringing them up to speed. So, all right, Steve, next slide. Tina?
Thank you. As far as fiscal responsibility, the fire company takes this very seriously. So I just wanted to take a minute and go over where our funds come from and what those funds are used for. Each year we get a contribution from the township. We have our annual fund drive for the residents and businesses. We have various fundraising events, and then we also apply for grants as much as possible. These funds go directly to our day-to-day operations. We do have an annual budget for the department, which includes debt service. So that's the mortgage on the new building, the loans for the vehicles, the capital equipment. Like Doug alluded to, the gear alone is over $2,500 per fireman, which also has a service life on it. The part-time staff have to be paid. And then the air packs that the firemen use to breathe when they go into the burning buildings, they only have a service life of so many years, and then we have to purchase them all at one time. So that's about another $150,000 purchase minimum to replace all those. So you can see everything in the fire service is expensive, from the trucks to the equipment. So we are very fortunate that we have volunteers that maintain our fiscal management by keeping us on track. We have a financial secretary who handles all the incoming funds, and a treasurer who writes the checks to pay our bills and maintains our bookkeeping. We have a certified public accountant who audits and provides an annual report of the fire company every year. As with any business, we do monitor our financial performance against the budget. And obviously, if for some reason we have a catastrophic event that one budget is way over, then we wind up cutting back on other areas. We do a monthly financial review with our board of directors, as well as a presentation at our monthly company meeting, so that all members know what is happening with the finances of the fire company. We also have a quarterly discussions with our Township Supervisor Liaison, Mr. Nawn, and Township Manager, Mr. Neese, to let them know what is happening as far as our finances. Next slide, please, Steve.
So this is a great example of really where some of our expenses really lie. So obviously the building, we're roughing that about 5.5 million. The building was 5.2, but when you start looking at the electric cost to run it through the parking lot, that was another $140,000. The security system, the information technology, it all adds to the cost of the building. Apparatus, in the past, apparatus has always been a huge expense for us, and we need to prepare for that 15, 20 years down the road in order to kind of be where we need to be when that purchase needs to be made. But on the right side, you know, you'll see a photo of one of our members, Joel Serto, who's one of our lieutenants, and just really what it costs to outfit a firefighter, basically soup to nuts, you know, head to toe. What does all that equipment cost? And when you look at it, it's slightly over $20,000. So everything has a cost. I just want to kind of relay that. Next slide, Steve.
As far as the financial support, I touched briefly on the annual fund drive earlier, as well as the fundraisers that our Lays Auxiliary spearheads to support our efforts throughout the year. Our 50% of residents give to our annual fund drive, and we're lucky if we hit 10% of the businesses that contribute to our annual fund drive. So we try to make an effort to let everyone know that we're here, we're going to respond, whether you contribute or not. But we really appreciate any financial support you can give the fire company. Every dollar counts, so there's not a minimum that you have to donate. We want to thank everyone who donates because we couldn't do it without you. There is a group that contributed to our building fund already, as our donor board downstairs will have their names on it, and we greatly appreciate their help. We also have a group that was formed with the construction of the new station. The Friends of the Fire Company is made up of community leaders and volunteers, and their mission is to help us reduce the debt and increase the financial reserves of the fire company. They aim to solicit corporate donations for us, room sponsorships in the new station, and community involvement. For any information, or if anyone is interested in becoming part of this worthwhile group, we ask you to please just send an email to friends@nsfc.org. and we'll be happy to reach out to you.
Great, thanks, Tina.
Thank you.
Next slide, Steve. So on predictions, so volunteers. So as I mentioned, you know, to really sum it up, our greatest asset is our volunteers, but yet it's our greatest challenge. And what do I mean by that? Is without the people, without the volunteers, the apparatus isn't going to roll out the door. The business end of the fire company is not going to run. And you know, that money that's needed to fund and keep the lights on this place just wouldn't happen. So our people are really our greatest asset, but as I mentioned, they're our greatest challenge because we do struggle to bring new members in. We've been fortunate over the last couple months. We had a new member join that previously ran with Manoa Fire Company, and he was an assistant chief. He has all the credentials, roll right in the door. We train him on our equipment and boom, he's ready to hit the ground running. But we also are challenged by, on the business side, bringing new members in that are able to help on the administrative side. We have fire police that are fire police officers. It's an aging demographics as far as just the volunteer world. You know, we're starting to see a lot of our members at that age where they're retiring. You know, we have members that are moving off or moving out of the area, moving to retirement communities. We've had others that have moved closer to their kids. So we lose those folks. But when you look at the younger population, a lot of the younger members that we have join, after they go to college, they leave, or they might get trained by us and then they take a career firefighter job. So that's really difficult for us. I mean, one of those things that we continue to look at, and how can we retain the volunteers, and how can we do a better job of recruiting them. Sorry, I need a little drink. And then I'll turn to Tina for the finance.
Thank you. As far as the finances, I just touched on briefly, but like Doug said, we do need volunteers to help us on the administrative side as well as with the financial side. The fire company was very lucky in that they've been prudent in saving for many years. Like I said, we've been around for 104 years, but the original land our station was on 252 was donated to us. We've been able to take low interest loans over the years to buy all our trucks. So this is the very first time we've had such a huge mortgage to pay off in a very long time. And we need to make sure that we can meet that as much as possible, and also build up an emergency fund in case we do have some sort of big issue with one of the vehicles that needs to be addressed. Because unfortunately, whenever there's a big issue with one of the engines or the ladder, it seems to be $20,000 is the minimum bill to start with.
Yep. And really, you know, as far as the demands on the emergency response, so as I mentioned, our call volume continues to increase year after year. When I first joined the organization back in 1984, we ran roughly 225 calls. As I mentioned, we're in the high to mid 700s, approaching 800 calls per year. So that's extremely difficult on the volunteer organization. So something that we really need to look at is really how do we get these volunteers to come in here and help us out. As far as the demands on emergency response, we have mutual aid that comes to our assistance when we have a building fire or serious car accident. Conversely, we help our neighbors a lot. We run between Edgemont, Broomall, Upper Providence. We run the main line. So all those calls add to our call volume and add to the time commitment that is needed by our members to really make things work here and keep the organization running. So obviously we're going to see a taxation on the members and the organization with the increase in call volume. You know, when you look at the community overall is growing. So we have new communities that are coming in between the Ellis Preserve, the Listener Estates, that's over 460 new residents. It's like a small community, similar to some communities in Delaware County, but that's a huge addition to call volumes on us. So, but also looking at the building construction. So building construction isn't like it used to be. There's a lot of wood frame construction that's built with trust members. So they fail a lot sooner under fire conditions if they're not, the fire is not attacked in a timely manner. However, a lot of our buildings in town have sprinkler systems. Back in the 80s, I believe it was, the fire marshal instituted the sprinkler ordinance. So the sprinkler ordinance has really helped us out as far as keeping the severity of calls down when it comes to a building fire, because the idea behind the sprinkler system is that it activates under a certain temperature in order to extinguish a fire, or at least keep the fire in check so that we can respond. But we're also seeing an increase in traffic in town. So we're starting to experience the widening of Westchester Pike. With that brings traffic. Makes it more difficult for us to respond to calls during the daytime. We have the ability to change traffic lights, but when you're kind of going over some of these hills in town, you can't hit the detector on the traffic or the light standard in order to change the traffic light to get us to where we need to go. So we see a lot of times an increase in our response time because with the traffic members trying to get to the firehouse, gear up, and then get out on the road. So there's some of the challenges that we see in the organization, and we continue to work with it. You know, our job, we're problem solvers, and our job is to, you know, do our best to get out there and address the concerns when they occur and do our best to serve the community 100% of the time. So with that said, I know we've taken up a lot of time. I really thank the Board of Supervisors for your time. If anybody has any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Tina. Presentation. I hope everybody watching takes heart in that. I will add that your volunteer issue is your, I guess, as I see it, your most pressing issue. Just in the last 10 years in Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we've gone from what, 300,000 volunteer firefighters to 50,000 volunteer firefighters. So that's a huge number. And, you know, finances can come and we can do things for emergency response, but if we're not getting the people volunteering, that's a problem. So I would echo your concerns there, and hopefully we can stem the tide and maybe get some more volunteers here in Newtown.
You're absolutely correct, John. Chester County did a study within the whole entire county, and they actually included us because we cover a section of Willstown Township, but I'd be happy to pass that on to the Board of Supervisors to kind of meander through that. It's very interesting.
I would like to see that. I'm sure the board would. So yeah, why don't you?
Yeah.
Any other board members have any comments, questions, or anything for Chief Everlof or President Heffernan? All right, hearing none. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to our next presentation from Linda McIsaac regarding the Gather in the Circle organization. They're going to bring us up to date on where we are with that, and I'll let her take it away.
Mr. Chairman, I'm promoting her right now to be able to present. I think she should be coming over. Linda, if you could unmute yourself. There we go.
Hi, can you see me?
Yep.
Okay. So good evening. It's nice to see everyone. Again, my name is Linda McIsaac. I'm chair of Gather in the Circle, and I'm here to provide an update for what we've been working on in 2020 and then our plans for 2021. So as a reminder, Gather in the Circle works to hold placemaking events within the township with a focus specifically on testing revitalization areas within the St. Albans Circle area. And we also are hoping to help create a sense of place and community by making sure we involve the community in that process. So we first proposed the idea of a placemaking committee for the township. I think we presented probably before the board about a year ago. So we've been hard at work planning a number of projects for 2020. And we were about to launch in April. And unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, we had to postpone our 2020 projects. But in the meantime, we have been hard at work making sure that we plan for successful 2021. So I'm hoping to update you briefly on what happened in 2020, but also talk to you about our 3 key placemaking projects that we're hoping to launch in 2021. So to just overview the progress that we have completed in 2020. So we are on track. We have been planning for 2021, which I'll talk about later. And in addition to the original placemaking projects that we were talking about and wanting to begin in 2020, we've added farmers market for 2021. And we have, had a survey out to the community and the public to just get their understanding if they'd be interested in a farmers market and what type of products they'd like, what day they prefer, just some data, key data to make it successful. And, the public is overwhelmingly supportive of the idea. We've also formed advisory partnerships with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Department and Delaware County Planning. And we've been working to make sure that we can count on their skills and advice when we do initiate any of the projects that we want to complete. And we've also formed partnerships with many of the township committees because I think we're going to be more successful if we involve as much of the township and the community and the stakeholders that we can. So, we have been working with making sure that, the EAC, the Newtown Square and Bloom nonprofit, the Business Association, Parks and Rec, that they're all aware of what we're planning to do and how it ties to maybe some of their goals as well. And we've also been in the process of making sure that we have proper funding to cover our 2021 projects. So, there were some setbacks when it came to funding for, this past year, in addition to the pandemic, because of budget concerns. We didn't want to invest in any project for this year that we thought maybe wouldn't add the kind of value that we'd hope. So, and we also applied for a AARP grant with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Department for a traffic calming project that they're going to partner with us on. Unfortunately, we did not get that grant. But the positive is we are securing grants for next year. And we also don't think that our projects are going to cost that much, because one of the key ideas behind placemaking, in addition to trying to build a sense of place and test ideas, is to test ideas as efficiently as possible with not using a lot of funding, so that you're not investing too much in the project and you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. So that's what we hope to do. Next slide. Before I go on to our proposed projects for 2021, does anyone have any questions about what I've discussed so far? No? Okay. So for 2021, so we want to make sure that we are focusing as much as we can on not too many projects, so that we make sure that they're successful. So we narrowed it down with our committee to focus on 3 key projects for 2021. First project is the farmers market, and the purpose of the farmers market is to activate St. Albans Circle area and also to build community. Another key purpose is that it is aligned with the strategic plan. And at the appendix of the slides, which if you want, we can go through them. I do lay out how the farmers market and each project does align with many of our strategic plan initiatives. So for instance, the farmers market, it does align with testing some smart growth ideas, some redevelopment ideas. It also strengthens community culture, and it also makes township more accessible, the government more accessible. And how it does that is because each of our projects will incorporate community outreach and information, surveys, data collection at each project, because we want to make sure that the community is having a voice in whatever ideas and projects we propose. So some of the key details with the farmers market is we're hoping to launch it in May of 2021. It's all pandemic related. We'll see where we are in May, but we're feeling pretty positive. So we're hoping to begin it in May, and it will last through September, and it'll be held weekly. We're going to locate it within the St. Albans Church parking lot, and they've generously given the go-ahead to use that space, which is really, I think it's just going to be a wonderful space to hold a farmer's market. We're also considering maybe if it's very popular, we could spill out onto Chapel Road And that also gives you an idea to, you could probably test a street closure if we think that that's fit, because I know that that also coincides with some of our possible zoning ideas. So, and then also another key detail is we are going to partner with many of the township committees, which we've met with most of them, and they're very excited to be a part of the farmers market and use that as an opportunity to do their own outreach within the community. So whatever they are working on or want to, explore and have the community know what they're doing, this is a good opportunity to do so. Next slide. So the next key project is this pop-up park and streetscape. And again, the purpose is for the pop-up park and the streetscape is we want to just test in an inexpensive short-term manner some public space additions, and then also just enhancements to the streetscape area around St. Albans Circle. And it's also going to help build community as well and a sense of place, because right now there's nowhere you can really enjoy a little relaxation in the St. Albans Circle area. And these also, again, align with this same strategic plan initiatives. So smart growth and strengthening community culture and making sure that the township's accessible, government's more accessible by allowing the community to feel like they have a voice and they have a part of the process of any testing of ideas that we may have. It's also aligned with the zoning rewrite because there is a proposed town center district, and some of within the proposal, because I also work on the zoning rewrite committee, there are streetscape elements that are included within the town center, and public space additions are also part of a town center district in the design guidelines, I believe. So it is aligned with the zoning rewrite as well. And again, we're going to collect data and make sure that the community has a voice, that will let us know, which then we let you know, how do they feel about a pop-up park? How do they feel about, some of these enhancements? So we're going to hopefully launch the pop-up park either late spring, early summer. Again, it depends on where we are with the pandemic. We're going to hopefully host the pop-up park in an underutilized parking space or spaces within the St. Albans area. Again, that's testing, are we efficiently using those land spaces now, and can it be turned into something more creative for the community? With the streetscape pop-up, those locations will be in and around the St. Albans Circle area with the businesses, and just hoping to, and also in the green space in the center. So again, just to test some of those town center district ideas of the design guidelines to enhance that space and just make it feel more welcoming. And again, this project will be coordinated with our partners, Newtown Square and Bloom, the Public Works, Parks and Rec, the area businesses. So we hope to have a coalition of strong supporters that will help this make this project successful. Next slide. And then the third project is the pop-up traffic calming and crosswalks. And so, the purpose of this is to test traffic calming measures and pedestrian crosswalks within the St. Albans Circle area to, help with making, pedestrians feel safer, also enhancing walkability. Really, it's very difficult to get from one side to the other in that area right now. And it's an expensive investment to add crosswalks and traffic calming. So when you do a placemaking pop-up traffic calming and crosswalk project, you don't invest in long-term, very expensive equipment to do the testing. You use short-term, inexpensive materials such as just painting a crosswalk, or there are these hay bollards, I think they're called, which could help with traffic calming. So again, you're testing these ideas in an efficient, inexpensive way that will then collect data from the community so that then the government, the township, can make an informed decision before they invest in the permanent structures, permanent crosswalks. Again, it aligns with the town center district rezoning and the strategic plan as well. So we're hoping to do this pop-up traffic calming crosswalk project within sometime summer, early fall. And it'll be St. Albans Circle area. And we're going to coordinate with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Department, Public Works, and the Police Department to make this, and the township, just make sure that it's done safely, correctly. We have traffic engineers and at the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Department who are very interested in working with us on this project. They have a library of placemaking materials that they're willing to use and partner with us on this project and give us, their expertise on how to best go about, setting up proper crosswalks and traffic calming for our data collection. So those are the 3 key projects that we're hoping to launch next year. And again, we're focusing on 3 because we want to do 3 projects well, to ensure that we have successfully held placemaking projects within this township. And if it is successful, that then we can continue next year, the year after, to test whatever the township would want. So I just think we want to make sure that 2021 is very successful, and we are working really hard to make sure that we are organized and we have all the steps in place so that can happen. So that's all I had for tonight. If you want, we can go into the other slides that discuss how each project aligns with this strategic plan. But in the interest of time, I'm just curious if you'd rather read that on your own, or if anybody else wants to ask any question, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Linda. Yes, we do all have a copy of the appendix slides that show how this complies with our strategic plan. Again, on behalf of the entire board, you guys are doing a great job. I think if we can come up with some way to better utilize St. Albans Circle, which is frankly a township resource, that's going to be good for the entire township and create that sense of center of town feel, if you will. So I do appreciate that. I don't know if any other board members have any comments or questions at this point. If
I do.
not, we will move
I have
on.
2. The first one is, was this, because I don't have a copy of this, was this not attached on Friday?
It was not attached Friday. We attached it this morning.
Okay, so I will just get that for myself. Linda, I don't know if this is a question for you. First off, thanks for the presentation. And as John said, thank you for all the work that you and your committee are doing for this Gathering the Circle. So this might not be a question for you. So if it's not, I'll punt it to Steve, but I'll ask it anyway. What is the status of the Christmas tree?
We were actually discussing that in this group this year. And, we think it's important to go ahead and do the tree similar to what we did last year. Even though we probably won't have a actual Christmas tree lighting, because the last several years, the attendance has been primarily tied to the dance studio, and the dance studio does not intend to do their program. So we're thinking that the numbers will be much less, but we think it's important to have the tree, and we think it's important to have it lit. And so we're working towards that.
So we will have a tree for this year.
Yes.
Same setup as last year?
Similar setup, I would assume. I don't know what we'll do for the center tree as much, just because we haven't figured out where that's coming from yet. We'll have to work on that and get that set.
So that was actually the next question. So are we ever going to be planting a tree in there again?
I think that as we start looking at how that center is used, then that would be the right time to do that. What we've talked about is doing, the only problem is they're incredibly expensive, but we're looking at that possibility, is doing some ball trees that we can plant in different locations until that is ready to be done, and make sure we do it the right way.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
The other thing that I would just mention, Linda hasn't mentioned, and if I know she said it publicly, so I think I can say this. Linda is actually leaving at the beginning of December and is heading to England for 5 years. Is that right, Linda?
Yes.
So her husband's being transferred over there, and so that's exciting for their family. And later on the agenda tonight is some discussion related to a little bit of how we go forward with the gather in the circle. Linda's been a key to tying all that together and has been the leader who's kind of been leading all of this and putting everything into place. And so we'll be discussing that a little bit later on the agenda, but I just want everybody to know that.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. And again, thank you, Linda, for everything you've done. And sorry to hear you're going. We'll miss you.
Yeah, before I'm cut off, I am very sad to go. I'm looking forward to London, but I am so invested in this project and in the township, and I see the wonderful potential that it has, and it already exists in the community. So it is with a heavy heart that I'm leaving. And so that's why I'm working very hard with our committee to make sure that regardless of I'm there or not, that this will be successful for next year.
Well, thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
All right, next we're going to move on to Steve with our budget presentation. Steve, I guess in the interest of time, this is a very important item, but hopefully you can move quickly through it.
So I'm going to actually turn it over to Rich. He's put together a lot of the presentation and is ready to go. I'll be interjecting as we go along, and Rich is there. All right.
This is the last presentation.
Oh.
I can do it again if everybody would like, but I feel that for the interest of time, we wouldn't go through 2 presentations. So as Steve's pulling this up, this budget has been presented in, I believe, 3 different parts at this point. So everything that you've seen here has already been presented to you. So we're going to really highlight on the major changes since the last presentation, as well as some fund balance that we didn't touch on in as much detail as last time. So moving right into it, as you can see, if this is the 2021 proposed general fund revenue, we are proposing using $634,000 in fund balance. As we spoke about in the last meeting, we're suggesting using the fund balance to cover the 1 year of the principal and interest payment for the road program. After that, the road program will be moved over to the liquid fuels funds, and we will use the state dollars as well as some more fund balance to pay that down.
Well, Rich, it's actually some of the money that we're putting in every year.
That's correct, yes. So since the last presentation, we were just suggesting using fund balance for the 508. Since then, we went back and we looked. The police vehicle replacement program did not make it into the 2020 budget. So we're actually going to propose using fund balance to purchase 2 police cars for $106,000. Recently, we've been seeing some wear and tear on the old cars. We're going to get into fund balance a little bit later in the presentation, but that was the major change in fund balance. Since the previous presentation, we haven't really seen any change in real estate taxes. We're still anticipating collecting about $68,000 more than in the 2020 budget. 35 of that is for new growth in the township, and the other 33 would be for some additional delinquent taxes, as well as interim taxes, since we know that the county is behind. Moving on to our other taxes, which is our LST and our transfer tax. Again, there has been no change. We're still anticipating an increase in LST tax of about $30,000 and a decrease in transfer tax of about $76,000. The reason we're anticipating the decline in $76,000 is just because of the availability of new homes within the township. So overall, we're going to suggest budgeting about $46,000 less in revenue for other taxes in comparison to 2020. Moving on to our business license, we're looking about $15,000 less. This is due to a slight decrease in our cable franchise fees, less rental units in 2020 versus in 2021 versus 2020, and as well as a slow in business license collections. We're hoping that the business license collections are COVID related and the revenues will return once things get back to more of a normal state. The next big change you're going to see from 2020 to 2021 is the interest. Interest is expected to collect about $40,000 less, and that's just because of the way interest rates are at this point in time. At the October meeting, we expected to collect about $416,000 in state revenue, but now we're only showing about $411,000. The reason for the slight change there is that the foreign fire relief aid from the state actually came back a little bit less than we were anticipating. The good news for that is, although we're seeing a $5,000 decrease in revenue, we also see a $5,000 decrease in expense. So it's budget neutral. The next major category you're going to see is other financing sources. There's been no change. These are our payments from the municipal authority for the use of the township staff, as well as from the school district for the use of the SRO. And the last major category you're going to see is public safety. We went back and we really looked at this again. We tried to break it up into two different categories. One would be our one-time reoccurring or one-time non-reoccurring, which would be your large permits from your developers. And then also your reoccurring revenue, which would be more of a residential. So we came up with roughly the same numbers, about $500,000 for our reoccurring revenue. And then we sat down with the developers, and they said they were anticipating about another $800,000. So that's where the $1.32 million came up in public safety. So that brings us to about $10.6 million in revenues. So looking at the legislative, you'll see approximately about $11,000 more budgeted in 2020 versus 2021. I'm sorry, 2021 versus 2020. We really took into account what the strategic plan said. So we actually built in our own, our mailer, an additional mailer. We had one in the 2020 budget. I actually believe that it might be on the agenda a little bit later, but we thought since it was such a hot topic in the strategic plan, it would be a good idea to build another one in. Lumping admin and finance together, you'll see an additional $90,000 in admin and a reduction of $40,000 in finance. This is just due to a relocation of a position. We had someone retire from the finance department in 2020, and the person we hired, we thought their job description would be better in the administrative department. In addition, judging by what the board has hinted at, as well as we heard from the strategic plan, we went back and we added some additional dollars from what we budgeted in the 2020 budget for the communications person to get the most qualified candidate for our communications person. You'll see a slight decrease in legal services. This is due to the fact that there are no police negotiations in 2021. So the $10,000 is what we had budgeted for the police negotiations. The large decrease you're going to see in is in the facility expenses. In 2020, we had a $273,000 transfer to capital budgeted in. If for the members on the board and residents that were there last year, there was a discussion that we would budget in a $273,000 budget transfer to capital to more accurately project what revenues we thought were going to come in for the permit side. If the permits did not come in, we were not going to transfer the $273,000. And since the last presentation, that 273 has been removed. So we reduced our expenses by $273,000 for transfer to capital. Next large increase you're going to see is from the police. It's about $200,000. 106 of it is directly related to the police cars that I just talked about that we're going to use for from our fund balance if the board chooses to, and the other 100,000 would be for salaries and benefits that are contractual. You will see a decrease in code enforcement of 35,000. This can be directly attributed to our reduced reliance on our third-party services. We have the staff in-house to handle a lot more things that we used to have to outsource to a third party, so we thought a reduction of about 35,000 was appropriate. The recycling expenses are up about $20,000, and this is from the contract that was approved earlier in 2020 that carries over into the 2021 fiscal year. Public Works has a slight increase of about $22,000. These increases can mostly be found in vehicle insurances, small personnel costs, as well as some possible salary adjustments. And the next major change, I believe, yes, Steve, can you go down one? You're going to see is in the street program. This is our road program. Every year, the staff suggests putting an additional $50,000 into the road program. This will bring us from $250,000 to $300,000, with the overall goal to end up at about $350,000 to $400,000 to fund our road program. So the last thing you'll see is the increase in, or I'm sorry, second last thing you'll notice is the increase to parks. As I talked about at our last meeting, our mowing contract is up. We got a very favorable bid the last time we went out for our mowing contract. And judging by some of the second closest bidder, we believe it's going to be a substantially higher. In addition, we have added some additional properties. That accounts for about 20,000 of it. And the other I'm sorry, the other $7,000 of it would be for an event to help gather in the circle, which we just heard from. So the last thing you're going to see is the debt. Our debt has increased about $513,000 since 2020. This is directly related with the 2020 road program. Like I said before, we would hope to transfer some of this expense, $513,000, to the liquid fuels fund for the 2022 budget. So that brings our total expenses to $10,633, or $10,633,000. So everything we've gone over, as you can see, our revenue is 10.6 million and our expense is about 10.6 million. But within the revenues, there's about 634,000 that we would be using our fund balance for. So I thought it would be appropriate to show the board what that would look like based on our projections.
Yeah, so Rich, okay, I'm sorry, you're still.
Yeah, yes, sorry, I was waiting for it to scroll. So as of 1/1/20, we have about a $5.9 million fund balance. We're projecting our revenues to come in at about 9.7 in the year 2020, and our expenses to come in at about 9.36. That gives us a surplus of about $400,000 for the year 2020. We initially were projecting that we would have about a $500,000 deficit back in May when we first presented. Then we came back in July and said that we thought we were going to break about even. But since then, we've had a $220,000 permit come in that we were not expecting, as well as continue to control costs. So that would actually leave us with about a $400,000 surplus for the 2020 fiscal year. So that would leave our fund balance of about 6.3 million as of December 31st, 2020. Using our 25% fund balance policy, that takes about 2.6 million of it away. And if the board chose to use the $634,000 that we're proposing in fund balance, that would take us to a projected fund balance of about $3 million in the general fund at the end of 2021. So after speaking with the finance committee, they thought it was important to show everybody how long it's actually taken us to get up to this $6 million number. As you can see, back in about 2011, 12, and 13, we were right about between 1 and 1.2 million. And then there was a large spike between 2015 to 18. In 2019, we made a $2 million transfer to the capital. So when we look at the capital fund balance, you'll see the $2 million spike go the other way. So it's taken us roughly 10 years to get up to our $6 million fund balance that we're at now. So does anybody have any questions about the fund balance and where we would project that we would end the year if we choose to use the 600,000?
Rich, maybe not a question about the fund balance, but back on the summary sheet, can you go back a couple slides there?
Sure.
So I would like to see, I understand you have the caveat down here using 634, but showing the general fund revenue at, at the $10 million and the expenses at 10.6, show the deficit there, and then bring in the fund balance to zero it out rather than show the revenue. I know you have it down here that 634 is really not revenue, it's fund balance is being brought in, but just show the revenue at what it is, and then the deficit, and then bring in the fund balance to zero it out. It's just that, that way people, I think then it's really displayed correctly. And then, so that's one comment. And then can you move forward a slide or two? Okay, yeah, okay, good, right there. So just to, for my recollection, so I don't have to look it up, what was the 2020 budget number?
Our 2020 budget number, give me 1 second, right here. It was about, I believe it was at $10 million.
10 million.
Yep.
Is that it? Okay.
Yep, $10 million.
Okay, so just going back there, so I want to see what happened with revenue and expenses. Down a couple slides back to the other slide, past the summary sheet, right there. Okay, so we were projecting 10 million balance budget between revenue and expenses, right? So, okay. And now we have final revenue projection 9.7, and then expenses of 9.3. Okay. All right. Good. All right. That's all I have for right now.
Do any other board members have any questions on the presentation? I
actually have a question, Rich. When we were refinancing, we had a double debt service because of remember we took advantage of the percentage, the low interest rates.
Yes.
Are we done with that in 2021, the double debt service?
So yes, that would be correct. That's actually for the road program. It's not for the refinance.
Okay,
So 2021 would be the only year that we have a double debt service payment as of now.
okay. And then in 2022, we won't have a double debt service then?
That's correct, because the 2016 road program loans will be paid off.
Okay, thank you. Didn't mean to confuse I knew it was somewhere, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Rich,
Well, go ahead. Another question. Go ahead, Leonard.
you have a question, John? You can go.
No, I have you go first.
Rich, and actually, Mr. Chairman, correct me, if you want me to discuss 5 questions about the actual budget, do you want me to wait until 15.1, or do you want, I don't have a question necessarily, I mean, one question maybe for the presentation, but the rest are about the budget in general.
No, I think the questions are fine now. Before you get started, I just want to remind folks that are in the audience, some of our attendees, that we're not taking public comment tonight on the budget. The goal is the presentation tonight, and if we agree to advertise the budget this evening, then that we would have a full public hearing on the budget at the next meeting. So with that being said, Mr. Altieri, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So just a few questions, Rich. One of them I have had addressed regarding the recycling. You know, that's obviously going to be something that I want us to look at. And it was brought to my attention because I was misunderstood. I thought the contract expired in June of 2021, but it actually was, it goes until December 31st of 2021 for us to get weekly recycling as opposed to the biweekly recycling. So that was the one question I had. The next question I had is the $600,000 that the township received from the sale of BPG. Where did that money go? In which deposit here, I guess?
So that money will be in the general funds.
Okay. How much money do we have in our open space fund or open space preservation fund?
So you're beating me to the punch, but I can tell you now. So projected at the end of 2020, we will have about $111,000 $112,000 in open space fund.
Okay. And that money that we received from BPG, you said it's in the general fund?
That is correct.
Was there, I mean, I guess question to my colleagues here, is that not something that we want to invest into an open space fund? Is this not the proper forum to be asking these questions?
No, I mean, we can discuss anytime, anything we want. If we want to move the $600,000 out of general fund into open space fund, without saying one way or the other, my question is, where do we come up with the $600,000 then to replace that hole in the general fund?
So I'll do this instead. I'll just, I guess, voice my concerns. And then before we get this approved, whenever that date is, if this even goes out to advertisement tonight, then I guess, in the next couple of weeks, I'll have conversations individually with my concerns or just questions, I guess. All right, so that's that one. So Rich, there is no revenue stream or there's no formula that we have that goes into an open space preservation fund, correct?
That is correct. As of now, there is nothing that goes from the general fund to the open space fund, unless a developer, that would go directly into open space.
Got it. And this might be a question for Steve. Steve, I know that there was preliminary discussions that we asked the township solicitor to look at the potential of a hotel tax and seeing if we could get a hotel tax enacted here in Newtown Township. We have one already that pre-COVID was booked 7 days a week between weddings and SAP. We have 2 more that are scheduled to be coming in here if the world goes back to some sort of normalcy. I know that there was potential conflict between, if the county has it, can a municipality have it, vice versa. Did we ever get a finalized answer on that?
I don't know. I know our solicitor was looking into that, and I don't have that answer, but I can find out for you.
Yeah, can we get a follow-up on that? Because
Yep.
just to have a discussion, if it's too late to put it in, obviously we haven't had the ordinance enacted, but I would like to sort of think of ways that we can start beefing up the open space fund with a designated source of income coming into it. The last question I have is, and this comes back to a few weeks ago why I was asking about township contracts and things like that. I would like to see us go out to bid for a township arborist. I think that Eileen has done a good job with Stantec. But, I think it's important for us to have a certified arborist that purely does this work. Stantec, as I said, I've been satisfied with the work that they've done, but I think that we should have a township arborist like we used to.
Okay.
I'm just one of five.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I think that's a good point, Mr. Altieri, especially with our new shade tree ordinance. I would expect that to be revenue neutral, thinking that whatever services Stantec was providing would be replaced with the arborist.
So do we need to take a vote on that so that Steve can do an RFP to get an arborist RFP up and running?
Well, we should probably approve the budget first that has that in there before we advertise for spending money. I mean, I guess, I don't know.
Well, I think that if you,
I think
I think if you give me a direction to put the RFP together, let me do that, and then we'll probably at the next meeting let you review it and make sure it's what you want, and then we'll put it out as an advertisement.
So we could
But
just
before-
do a voice vote right now. It just says, yes, go prepare it, and then take a formal action once you have the RFP prepared.
Well, wait a minute. Before we move forward with an RFP for the expense for an arborist, I mean, John, you mentioned revenue neutral. Now, if it's going to be revenue neutral, yeah, I'd be in favor of it. If it's not, and it's going to, have any budget impact, then I might not think the same way. So shouldn't we first establish, at least theoretically, how this would be funded? Would it in fact be revenue neutral, or?
Well, theoretically, we're already getting those services from our engineer. If the engineer is not providing those services, then they would have a reduction, we'll say, in their services, which we would then use to pay for the actual new arborist.
Well, let me ask you this, in terms of process, if we go out with the RFP, then if we go out with the RFP, we get the numbers back telling us what we can look at. Isn't that answering the question there, Ed? That would determine whether we're budget neutral or not.
Good point.
And to piggyback off of Leonard, we had talked about maybe putting out like some of those contracts like Stantec and some of the other contracts that are, that we've had for a while. And I know that you sent that to us, Steve, the list of third parties. When is it appropriate to do those? I mean, I know in January is when we rename our township engineer. So when is it too late to do those, to put out the stuff to bid?
No, but I mean, if we want to do that, I probably need direction either this meeting or next meeting if you're going to appoint in January.
It's the board's pleasure. If we're putting out an RFP, we're going to need at least one or two board members to then review all these, to sit down with staff and make a recommendation. So here we are at the practically the beginning of November. You got to have the RFP out for at least 10 to 15 days.
Right.
So, somebody's got to be committing between Thanksgiving and Christmas to be interviewing with people and making a selection. I mean, we want to try this with the arborist and see how it works. I mean, even though we appoint in January, doesn't mean you can't change horses in the middle of the year anyhow.
Okay, I was just, I mean, we've had other things.
I think this is more of a long-term thing that we want to think about.
Yeah.
Like if you want to, there's a lot of people on that list, and a lot of them have,
I know, that's what I'm looking at right now. And a lot of money on this list as well.
current ongoing projects that just because you, like, for instance, if you change the engineer, well, we've given them direction to design certain projects. Do we stop them and pay them for a half design, or?
No, I get it, but it's also a way to see if there's a way that they can maybe save money as well, right?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, aside from the arborist, I think that's something that we all work toward next year to see what we can do. And, if we make those decisions, then we can certainly start advertising and doing those things in June or July rather than.
Yeah, no, that's why I asked the question.
So I think it was a good question.
Thank you.
So back to the arborist, do we just want to, I mean, do we want to give Steve the direction to say, why don't you go put an RFP together at the next meeting, present it to us, and then we can take the formal vote to advertise that or
Yes.
not? I hear a yes.
Sure.
Leonard, I assume you're good with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, Mr. Chairman.
Ed, are you good?
Sure.
Mike?
Yes.
Mr. Neese, I think you have your direction to at least get an arborist on board.
Got it. I just want to make sure that we expect that one thing that we have not been doing in the past with Stantec was we now have the tree commission. Do we want the arborist to be having some connection with the tree commission? And if so, if I put that into the piece, that would be an extra cost, I would assume.
Well, I think it would be silly not to have the arborist tied in with Shade Tree Commission. So, put that in the RFP and then we'll have to see what the numbers are.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Everybody agree with that?
Mm-hmm. You can always make it as an ad and then,
Right. Yeah, we can, I mean,
I'll break it out as part of the cost.
back to Rich for a minute. Rich, it wasn't your intention to run through the other 32 slides, was it?
Yes. But I will tell you, the other 32 slides will go much faster. We can
Okay.
probably do all 32 in the time that it took us to do the first 6 or 8 or whatever.
Well, as long as that's the guarantee, we'll strap in and Rich,
So,
Is there anything else
summarize.
related to the
Yeah.
general fund?
mute
first?
all the supervisors. How's that? Just mute.
I'm okay with that. I'll mute myself.
All right,
Yeah,
Rich,
just
let's go.
summarize it, Rich.
Sure. So our streetlight fund, as you can see, there's not very much change in revenue. The only thing that you're going to see is a slight increase in real estate taxes due to some new homes and a slight decrease in interest due to the interest rate. It brings us to $50,878 in revenue. Moving on to our streetlight expenses, you'll see a slight increase in our traffic control. That is just because we are anticipating a bit more maintenance in our streetlight funds, which brings us to $48,723. So in short, the streetlight fund is going to have a surplus of $2,155. And using our projections, we're projecting to have a fund balance of about $95,000 at the end of 2021, which is right in line with what we've been saying. We want to have our streetlight fund at about $100,000 in fund balance. Moving on to our hydrant revenue, as you can see, there's $12,457 in the use of fund balance and a slight uptick in our real estate taxes, which brings us to $86,269. And then the only expense we see in the hydrant fund is the hydrant rentals from Aqua, which are proposed at $86,269. Using the fund balance, we believe that our fund balance is going to be at $38,350 at the end of 2021, which is where we want it to be. Since we only want to have about one quarter rental payment in fund balance, so that's why I've been spending it down over the past couple of years. Each rental payment is about $20,000 a quarter.
So Rich, let me ask you a question about the rental payment.
Sure.
So Aqua, for the fact that they put there's a fire hydrant in town, each fire hydrant, we pay a certain rental on each year.
That is correct, yes.
What about the ones that are installed by the developers?
I believe
We
that
pay- We pay for a rental of those too?
We do if we've taken dedication of the street.
Okay, is it so much per fire hydrant? How do we know how much they're charging us per fire hydrant?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but it's itemized on the bill. And George Ferris and I go back and we try to verify that there are that many hydrants in the town that we are paying.
Okay.
So again, I was under the assumption when I came here that we also were responsible for repairs. We are not. And that's one of the reasons why we're spending down reducing this fund balance. At the same time, we're increasing the street light fund balance because there we are responsible. So we want to have that 100,000 there to take care of that. And we want to get this down to about, was it 30,000, Rich?
Yes.
Yeah, so just so everybody understands, probably next year we'll have one more year like this, and then we'll be putting in to switch the taxes, that gap in the taxes back, and to cover all the expenses in the streetlight.
So this is just, I wanted to show a history just so everybody could see this is how long it took us to get to the fund balances we're at. Prior to 2017, the streetlight and hydrant were actually grouped into the general fund. That's why you'll see the fund balances actually start to accumulate in 2017. So our war on drugs account, this comes from forfeitures from drug seizures. Everything comes out of fund balance. This is one of those funds that if we don't have the dollars, we won't spend the dollars. So after talking with the police chief, he suggested about $10,000 in revenue coming from fund balance, and about $10,000 in police equipment for 2021, which at the end of 2021, we're projecting to still have about $21,000 in fund balance.
Do we need to spend that money right now? Do
No,
we need that equipment, or?
According to the police chief, he would like to get the equipment next year. But like I said, if we don't.
So it's stuff, I mean, we're not just spending it down and spend it down. I mean, this is a need where we have where our equipment is not.
Usually this expenses is when we look at like if a piece of equipment they need for investigation, or this is where they were able to get their camera from. So like as they have expenses in that kind of a way, that as long as it's semi-drug related, they can spend it out of here.
Yeah. No, I understand, Steve, but I'm just saying if we need to spend it right now, or we leave the 10,000 in there, and then, we need
I'll have the chief give us a detailed explanation of what the 10,000 is for, so that you know what it is.
He can, yeah, you don't have to, yeah, I mean, that'd be good just to know, okay, it needs to be spent,
Unless
or
you
we
already
could
have it, Rich.
I do not have an itemized list from the chief. No, he just gave me a summary.
All right. Yeah, let's look into it, but let's move on. We don't need to spend any more time on it, but.
Moving on, police donations revenue. It's almost very similar to the war on drugs. If we don't have the funds, we're not going to use the funds. The police donations was originally for the K-9 unit. Since we no longer have a K-9 unit, this is another place that the police department could get some of their equipment from. So we'll show $8,500 in revenue and $8,500 in expense, which would leave us a projected fund balance at the end of 2021 of about $48,000.
And we'll do the same thing with them.
So again, it looks like we started to track the war on drugs and police donations account in 2011 and 2012, and that's why you'll see the fund balance history start there.
Whoops.
Moving on to our open space, we are projecting about $19,350 in fund balance and $650 in interest. So in 2021, we're planning on expensing about $20,000 on some additional trees. As you can see, we have about a $358,000 fund balance now, but we use part of this money for the sawmill property purchase. So that's going to bring us down to a projected of about $112,000 in at the end of 2020. And with the use of fund balance in 2021, it's going to take us down to about $92,000. So for I guess the last big fund here is our capital reserve fund. Our capital reserve, we try to break it down into one-time capital purchases that we would spend out of fund balance, and then the operating transfers are reoccurring. We transfer the money from the general fund over. So as you can see, we're expecting about $782,000 use of fund balance, $10,000 in interest, $348,000 in state revenue, and that would be for the leaf collection trailer. If we don't collect the $348,000, we will not expense. So if we don't, like I said, if we don't collect it, we're not going to show the expense either. So at the end of the day, it's about $1.3 million proposed in the capital revenue. So this is everything broken down by department, but Steve, just for time's sake, if you skip to the next slide, I have everything itemized. So these were the things that were explained to you at during the other budget presentations. Some of the biggest expenses would be the sidewalks around the township building, the replacement of the F-550, some library carpets and gutter repairs, and the leaf truck is actually what I was talking about. We would expense this $38,794 from fund balance if we did not get the grant. So moving on to the capital summary, as you can see, it comes to 3.2, but 782,000 of it is use of fund balance. And scrolling down, this is what our fund balance projection would look like. At the end of the year, we're projecting to have about 3.8 million. We have a $1 million fund balance policy, and the use of 782 would bring us to about $2 million in projected fund balance. But with that being said, we're also projecting $3 million over the fund balance policy in the general fund. So we do have the ability to transfer the $3 million from the general fund over to the capital fund to bring it up to about $5 million. This is the 10-year history of the capital fund balance. And last but not least is our stormwater revenue. We're projecting to use about $48,000 in fund balance, bringing it to $50,000 in revenue. And then after speaking with the township engineer, she provided numbers that she's about $25,000 for township work with storm water related items and $25,000 of stormwater inspections.
Rich, what about when we have these funds? Like, I thought we had a vehicle replacement fund, and I thought we had a equipment replacement fund for public works. Do we show any of this on this slides or no?
So they're not funds, they're vehicle replacement programs. They're built into the general funds.
So
Well, but as we collect the money, Rich, we are putting it aside if we haven't spent it. So we need to be able to show that. We can.
Okay.
Yeah.
As of right now, they're not in particular funds. They're committed fund balances in the general funds and capital funds.
All right.
So each year we go back and we balance it out, Mike, and then you pass, at the end of the year, the board passes that amount to be maintained as part of the fund balance, and you commit it. But we'll break that out for you so you can see what it is.
Right. And just like Leonard was asking about the open space fund, and we had a slide on that. So at least we can see what we're doing with that. So I think if we're going to keep money in different pots for different things, we should at least show people and be, transparent that, hey, here's what we're doing, and it has $1 in there, it has $50,000, whatever it may be.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So this is where, Rich, I was saying that understanding all the different quote bank accounts, right? So you have the general fund, you have the capital reserve, and then you have the street light fund. I mean, to see where all the money is, maybe just put it all on one slide, right? The balances of all the different funds. But I mean, obviously the two main funds are the fund balance and the capital reserve.
All right. And the last slide is just the stormwater fund. Oh, I'm sorry, liquid fuels fund. So the main revenue from here is what we get from the state liquid fuels allocation. We're expecting about 3,700 and 1,000. And then our main expenses, well, our only expense in the liquid fuels is the debt service that we took out for the 2016 road program that we've been speaking about, that will be applied to the 2020 road program once that funds. So using the projections at the end of 2021, we're expecting to have a higher fund balance by about $56,000. And this is just the fund balance history. You can see where we took the some of the road program monies out of.
Does anybody have any questions for Rich? All right, we are, again, on the agenda, I think it's another 15, is under new businesses advertisement of the budget. If we vote to advertise the budget, then we will have a public hearing on the budget at our next meeting. So with that,
Mr. Chairman, I would mention that it would not be at our next meeting. It'll be at the second meeting in November. We have to have 20 days between the advertisement and the actual hearing. We can talk about it at the next meeting, but the actual hearing has to be at the second meeting in November.
well, once we advertise, we'll publish publicly all the gory details, the full budget, everything like that, so everybody has a chance to go through it line by line, and we can make sure we got in there exactly what we want. Rich, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. I think you and Steve and the rest of the staff there have done an amazing job with the budget. The fact that we can report essentially a balanced budget, even though we're taking money from fund balance in the midst of COVID and in the light of our reassessment and all those other things, that we can still have a balanced budget and still get all those things we want to get. I think that's a great thing. So my congratulations to you on getting this all worked out. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, one thing that was mentioned briefly, but I just want to make sure that it's clear, and we don't need to discuss it tonight. We'll discuss it when we get to the other spot, but included in the budget is a 1% increase for non-uniform folks. You know, the police have a contractual 3%.
Right.
And then there are also some salary adjustments that I will present to you. So I just wanted you to know that that is in the budget, and I wanted the public to be aware that's in the budget. So Rich mentioned it, but he mentioned it pretty quickly. So I just wanted to bring a little bit more attention to it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on. We still got a lot of things to cover here. So next item on the agenda is reports. Now we have reports from a number of folks here, and most of them, as far as I can tell, are not online. So some of them are, but most aren't. So as I'm going to run down this list real quick. We do have a report from our police chief, Chris Lund. Chris is not online, so it's there. We can all read it. We have a report.
Mr. Chairman, if I could for just a second. I know it's been a long night already, but I just wanted to say that the chief did do the police officers did a traffic study or a speed study on Sawmill and did a recent Sawmill enforcement, speed enforcement. The speeds are up there, and Chris and I are looking at some ways to try to slow that traffic down, but he did a speed enforcement just this last week. So I want everybody to know that.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Neese. All right, report from the fire department, Chief Everlof. I see Tina's still on, but I know Chief was with her. I don't know if there's anything to add. If there is, raise your hand. Otherwise, we're going to move on.
I have nothing.
Thank you. Anything from you, Mr. Neese, on the fire report?
No, I'm going to be quiet.
Go ahead. Emergency medical services. I don't see Chief Laws on there. I'm assuming he doesn't have anything to add. We have his report. From Public Works, we have George Sharrett's report. He's not on. Mr. Neese, do you have anything to add to that?
Actually, I think Mr. Sharrett's is on his Newtown, unless he's gone off in the last.
There is a Newtown Township under attendees. Is that George?
That's George.
George, you still there? Raise your hand if you want to add anything. He did raise his hand.
Whoops.
He didn't raise his hand.
Oh, I guess he didn't want to add anything.
Okay. Well, since he's there, does anybody have any questions for George?
I do. I have two questions for him. The first one is what the status is for the St. Anastasia's crosswalk. He and I were talking earlier, I guess late last week. He said that it's been expedited. There were some issues with PennDOT, so I just wanted to know if I could get a follow-up on that.
George?
Yeah, George. His microphone's on and he raised his hand. So
Since he's having trouble, hopefully he'll get a chance to speak. Mr. Altieri, I did talk with George over the last, well, we didn't talk today about it, but we have talked about it. We are still working on getting approval for the signs. He's ordered the signs. If they've at least given us the ability to put those on the in the median. And so we will be doing that as soon as they finalize that approval. But we've gone ahead and ordered them so we would have them ready to go. We're working still on, the last I heard, we're still working on a couple of things that PennDOT has to give us approval of so we can get the bid put together for the actual, what's being put on the cross post. That's the piece that's in question. They're worried about the impact of the weight of the sign or the wind of impact on the mast arm. And so we're trying to get through that. And as soon as we have that answer, then we'll finalize everything and get it done.
So we're waiting to hear back for that arm before we move forward with the other improvements we can do?
Correct. That because the signs are, we would do the signs and the light change at the same time. Okay. And we're going to do the framing on those lights, the brightness to get them out, but we can do the signs on the ground sooner. So we're trying to get that done. He's ordered those signs already. They may already be in today, but we were trying to get those in so that we could get those in as soon as PennDOT gave us the go.
And we don't have an ETA on when PennDOT's going to give that okay?
We thought we would have it late last week, early this week. And when I talked to him last week, we hadn't yet gotten it.
Okay. Last question is, where are we on the paper road dedication policy? I know we've had a very busy, crazy year, and I know it's been, talked about, and it's, there's other high ticket items, but as we're getting into winter, just curious where we are.
It comes back. I don't know that we've put a lot of effort into it, to be honest, because we've been a little sidetracked on a couple other things. I will get with George and see where we are and do that. We are having one of our meetings with our solicitor and our engineer this week that we do regularly. So we should be able to address some of those things at that meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Shards?
I would just mention that we have been getting some concern about the leaf collection. Just a reminder, we are doing one collection this year. And contrary to some people's statements, it's not because we're lazy. We're doing one collection because with the staff that we have and trying to keep COVID compliant, that is all we can do.
I think as we discussed at the last meeting or meeting prior to that, I think your plan for leaf collection is excellent. And the fact that we can go out there and people have a scheduled time, I think that's great. I mean, I almost like that better than the previous way we did it. I mean, the whole idea of knowing exactly when you're time and when we're coming, that's awesome. I love it.
My neighbors have been saying nothing but good things about it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
All right, moving ahead. We have a report from Andy Rezchek. He's not online. Does anybody have any questions regarding building codes, or Mr. Nish, you have anything to add?
No.
Good. We have a report from Mr. Lafiata. I know we've just heard extensively from him. Does anybody have any questions on Mr. Lafiata's report? Good. Arlene is on. She did leave us a report. Does anybody have any questions for Arlene? And if Arlene has anything to add, certainly raise your hand and we'll get you working. Seeing nothing, hearing nothing. Good, good. Wade Pollock's not on. We have his report. And finally, Rich Eno is on. I believe he was. And we do have his report. If anybody has any questions for Rich, or if Rich has anything to add, speak up. All right. Fantastic. That gets us through those. Under item 10.10, we have the report from our engineer, Eileen Nelson. We have no report from her. Eileen, do you have anything to add or anything to discuss with us, I should say?
I
Um,
wanted to let you know, the Earls Lake drawdown is complete.
Solid.
They found the top of the sediment was different than the bathymetric survey showed. They're going to be setting the breach at elevation 250 instead of 246. They are also working with a modification to the sanitary sewer crossing protection because of being so much higher in elevation than they anticipated from their design. There was also a complaint from a neighbor regarding some fence damage around the lake. Apparently a dog got stuck in the muck during the drawdown. And the contractor did acknowledge that they're making that repair as soon as possible. With respect to the Clearbrook culvert, all the shop drawings have been approved and the end wall sent for fabrication last week. And as Steve mentioned at the last meeting, the depression in the street, we put them on notice that they need to extend their one call dig area around there for them to investigate and develop what we need to do to repair that. With respect to the Flanagan Center infiltration bed, the manhole that was above grade has been adjusted and the area around it graded. We're just waiting on a determination from the Township Manager as to the acceptability of that. With respect to the road program, the punch lists are being worked on. And if you recall, we sent out surveys for the drainage complaint investigations. And of the over 500, we received 83 responses. 49 were from the lower St. Albans area and 34 from the Heights. I was surprised to see that some people actually sent them back saying they don't have any drainage issues, which is good, but I was expecting, only to hear from people who have problems. What we're proposing to do with those is review them, scan them in, have them categorized, and put together a mapping to show where those problem areas are most pronounced to move that forward. And as I promised last time, I was going to provide a few exhibits to show you the status of the Lister development, hopefully quickly. Stephen, do you have those?
Where do you want me to start with?
If you start with the Lister lot status. The drawing that's popping up or populating here, to orient everyone, on the right side of the plan is 252. On the bottom of the plan would be Goshen Road. And the color coding here is the green lots have been issued either a final or a temporary certificate of occupancy. The red lots are currently under construction. There are still 2 model homes in the development and no coloring on 17 of the lots, which still remain to be constructed. They're up in the northern part, closest to the nature preserve. There are a total of 17 there that have not pulled permits yet. So this gives you an idea of the level of completeness of the lots themselves. Next up, Stephen, if you call up the galleries. And this will be a plan that you have to rotate clockwise for me, the view. On the far left of this plan is a table that shows the number of galleries that are to be constructed throughout the entire development. The color coding here is to show you that the green galleries have been constructed. The red remain to be constructed and the blue have been installed, but they have not had the blockages removed for total functionality.
Eileen, are you,
Yes,
do they have to, per their agreement, do they have to keep so much money in escrow for your yearly inspections of these galleries?
it's not an escrow account. It's a stormwater operations and maintenance fund that is a total of $208,000 over a 10-year period following completion.
Is that money kept by, who holds that escrow fund? Is
We
that
will
held by
hold
the,
that in the stormwater fund, Mike.
we hold it? Okay.
We will
So
hold
that-
it in the
Yes.
stormwater fund.
And do
That's
they have-
already been, I'm sorry, what?
And do they have any monies like set aside for, I mean, to clean this out on a yearly basis with vac trucks and stuff? I mean, is there any money set aside or is that strictly just for your inspection? And then whatever you comes out of your report, they have to come up with the money in the Listener Association?
Yes,
So there's no sinking fund that has money started by toll for them to maintain this system.
I believe it would be part of their HOA funds, but I don't have all of that detail. That's not part of my purview.
All right, wonder if you knew. Okay, thank you.
Next plan is the common area and on-lot beds, Stephen. Again, rotated clockwise. On the right-hand side, we didn't do the full coloring across the board, but you can see for the on-lot beds, there are probably only 4 that are not fully functional. All the ones in green have a CO and they're in place and working just fine. The common area beds on the left-hand side, there are, I believe, 3 that need to be unblocked, but the remainder of them are also installed and functioning. And to give you this was to give you a sense of the volume of them and how much has been completed. The next exhibit, Stephen, is the flushed inlets in December of 2018. This plan will give you an idea of when this exercise gets undertaken. There has to be color coding provided to the contractors so they know what inlets are associated with each facility, because some of them actually cross over one another. This was something that was provided by toll prior to them entertaining these flushings to open those facilities. The next plan, which is the basin exhibit, Stephen. Is the newest color-coded plan to show the facilities that need to still have that process undertaken. They're primarily in phase 3B and phase 4 because that is still under construction. And I know it's been said to death, but one of the reasons some of the flushing has not taken place is delays with respect to COVID and getting the contractors on board. So this is kind of just I know it's a lot of information all at once. I can provide copies to everyone if they'd like. But lastly, you had requested what paving repairs we had directed to their attention. And that is the last exhibit, Stephen, that is actually an email that shows 13 locations where either potholes or depressions and we feel road repairs need to be undertaken before the winter months.
Eileen, if you could share those 6 exhibits with the board members, I think that would be helpful.
Not a problem.
Does anybody have any questions for our engineer?
Nope, thank you.
Super. Eileen, do you have anything else in your report?
No, that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, moving on to Mr. Neese. Mr. Neese, you've got a couple of things here. There we
Yes, Mr. Chairman, a couple quick things. At your direction last time, or not at your direction, but at my request and your allowance, we went back, we talked to the people who applied, the top 10 that the Public Works Department had. 8 of the top 10 were still available. And so assuming that you're okay, I've instructed George to move forward with doing interviews of those 8 people. And we will bring before you, hopefully, a replacement here in the near future.
Everybody good with that?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Secondly, earlier today, I mailed out a contracts list to you. That is the best that I can tell of the things that are ongoing and that are out there right now for you to take an examination of. There are a couple on there that I listed as proprietary. For example, our software, with it isn't as simple as just saying we're just going to have somebody different do it, if that makes sense. Because it's proprietary, we would end up having to replace the entire software. And so in some of those cases, the expense would be very high, but that's what the expense is for the ongoing expense. And I wanted you to see that. Any questions that you have, please feel free to email me and I'll try to get you answers. And then we can share that all at the next meeting. We're moving forward with advertising for boards and commissions and making sure that people have an opportunity. Those people who wish to continue to serve, we've already sent out letters so we can get that back to you. And then we're moving forward with advertising. We'd like to move forward with advertising at your direction for those positions. As long as you're okay with that, we will do that.
Mr. Neese, can you provide, or did you provide a list of those vacancies and terms of expiration to the board members?
If we haven't, we will.
Okay.
We'll get that out this week too.
I trust everybody's okay with advertising to fill all those vacancies?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the earlier we get it out, the better, get more responses, and that's good. So yes, if you could share that list with us, Mr. Neese, I think that'd be good.
Great.
Any questions for Mr. Neese? All right, moving on. Let's see if we can get through some of this now. Budget adjustment, item 11. We have one item. Consider approving budget increase 2020-07, which is going to increase the general fund budget account for insurance refunds by $1,575 and increase the account for sweeper repairs by a similar amount, $1,575. The increase will come from an insurance reimbursement due to the street sweeper being involved in an accident. Any questions on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Partridge to approve item 11.1. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have 3 items under payments. Item 12.1 is to consider approving the $75 refund to Autumn Innes with Sarah Olivia Marketing at 123 Weatherburn Way for a business registration fee associated with the business that is not located in Newtown Township. Anybody has any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Robert Lightcap, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve item 12.1. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda is consider approving the $75 room rental refund to Muirwood Hill. All meetings scheduled in the township meeting rooms have been canceled due to COVID. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So
Motion
moved.
for approval.
Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
A motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve item 12.2. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Last item under payments is item 12.3. This is to consider approving the application of the excess pension contribution from state aid in the amount of $13,886.99 to the non-uniform employees plan. Perhaps, Mr. Nish, you could shed some light on this one?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Over the last several years, we've had a few dollars that have come in from the state that's greater than what we've budgeted. This year, it's actually a little less than what we normally hope for, but we have had a little bit of extra than what we budgeted. As you know, a couple years back, we started the process of taking this excess and applying it to the non-uniform pension so that we can continue to get the non-uniform pension from an 8% assumption rate, hopefully down to a 7% assumption rate. And right now we're moving in that direction. And each time we do a little extra, that helps us move in that direction. And so that's what this is.
So
Fantastic.
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap to approve item 12.3. Any further questions or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 13, I had the opportunity before this evening meetings to review the bills on the check register dated today in the amount of $111,501.98. And it is my motion that we approve said bills. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion was seconded by Supervisor Partridge. Is there any further questions or discussions on item 13.1? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have 3 items under developer release. Recognizing what they're for, I think we'll take them separately. Item 14.1, consider approving escrow reduction number 3 to Toll Brothers for the Ellis Townhomes in the amount of $244,445.94, which will leave a remaining balance of $562,022.87 as recommended by the Township Engineer.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve item 14.1. Any questions or discussions on item 14.1? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 14.2, consider approving Lister Phase 2 escrow reduction number 3 to Toll Brothers totaling $213,418, which will leave a remaining balance of $440,849.60 as recommended by the Township Engineer.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Which was made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Partridge to approve item 14.2. Any questions or discussions on this item? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving item 14.2, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 14.3, consider approving Lister Phase 4 escrow reduction number 3 to Toll Brothers in the amount of $197,784, leaving a remaining balance of $1,526,111.96 as recommended by the Township Engineer.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Is Mr. Partridge, is that a second?
That's a second.
All right, motion is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Partridge to approve item 14.3. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, moving on to new business. Item 15.1, consider approving the permission to advertise the 2021 proposed budget. Now, again, we're not approving the budget. This is just to advertise the budget so we can have the public hearing and discussion on it. A couple of things to note. I think we're all aware of that. Once we advertise it, we can go down as low as we want, but there's a limit to how high we can go if we decide to raise it. So with that being said, is there any discussion, or does somebody want to offer a motion?
I'll make some discussion.
Okay.
I think that we were all aware of rolling the possibility proposal of moving fund balance, to cover the road program, just over $500,000. I think couple changes here. One that went in, the $106,000 for the 2 police cars. That's new to the budget this week. It was added, and I think some money for increases for non-uniform personnel were added also. So I guess, the pleasure of the board, whether we want to, take these additions in and also cover these with additional fund balance, because fund balance proposal to cover everything now, there's obviously a difference between the revenues are $634,443 short to cover the proposed expenditures. So I guess the question, are we willing to fund, to use fund balance? I mean, is there any other adjustments to revenue and expenses, and especially around the police cars and the increases? Is everybody comfortable with those additions? So,
Well, Mr. Partridge, just let me say, I don't, if these are potential deductions from the budget that you're talking about, I don't think there's any danger in us advertising it. And then when we have our public discussions, if that's the pleasure of the board, taking those items out. But if we advertise a budget lower right now and then decide somehow that we want to add those items in, we're going to be precluded from doing that. So by voting to advertise what we have before us right now, in no way, shape, or form is an endorsement of what that budget is, just simply the advertisement. And if the only comments at this point of what we're going to continue to take out, well, then there's no danger in advertising the higher budget and then revising it downward later. Right now, we're advertising a budget that shows no tax increase. So I don't know how that would be a bad thing either. So.
Right, but understanding, I mean, it's no tax increase only because we're using our savings account to cover the increases in the expenditures that went into the budget. I mean,
And if we take those expenditures out, then we won't take the money out of our savings account, as you say, and there'll be no harm, no foul. I mean, so I would be, and I'm not saying those things should stay in. I would be real concerned about advertising something that isn't the upper limit, and then go down from that rather than locking ourselves in something that's lower and then.
Yeah, John, I agree. We can always go down unless somebody, objects to, the fundamental, expenses that are going into this budget, then maybe they wouldn't be comfortable with going down. They want the expense out now, as an example. But I agree with you in principle. We can advertise it the way it is, and and then deal with downward adjustments later.
Well, that I think is the proper way to do it, but I mean, it's whatever the board's pleasure is.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't have a problem with the police vehicles. Sitting here today, I don't have any problem with them, and I think that what John's saying, and again, and this is my first rodeo, I understand that, but it makes more sense for us to advertise a higher budget where we then have more autonomy if we decide to, in the next 4 weeks, to reduce that. It gives us the ability to do so. I don't like the idea of us pigeonholing ourselves into something where we would have to re-advertise again and then potentially get us right up to the cutoff time of when we need to have the budget approved. So I think that the more autonomy and wiggle room that we have with the numbers, the better. It'll make all of our lives. And again, I'm the newbie on this, so take that for what it's worth.
No, and you're right, Mr. Altieri. The discussion on the police cars is properly held once we've advertised the budget, and then we can all discuss that budget in public. And we don't want to lock ourselves into something that is, we can't go back on. So I think, again, I have no problem with this at this stage, just simply because we're passing a budget which shows us no tax increase, and it's the upper end of where we all feel comfortable going. And then, we'll lower it if we need to. And that's part of our discussions that we'll have. Again, reminding everybody that with 20 days to advertise, that even if we advertise it tomorrow, which I'm sure Mr. Nice is ready to do, if we can't hear this until our November 23rd supervisors meeting. So if we do not vote to advertise tonight, we are pushing this to our December meeting, which doesn't give us time to then, perhaps at our November meeting, we have to have reconvene in December. So at least by doing it this way, we have the chance to discuss it in November and December, we feel like, without locking ourselves into a last minute budget discussion. Would anybody like to, any further discussion, or would anybody like to offer a motion one way or the other?
So I have a question. So since Mr. Altieri was talking about putting more money into other places, if we approve the budget at this amount, can those monies be moved around at the next meeting?
To the best of my knowledge, yes. If we're going to put more money in there for open space, we're going to have to pull it from something else. Because
So are we talking about just moving fund balance? Is that what you're asking?
No. Oh, we have a list of things like for Public Works, we want the following 25 items. And I don't know that I want to buy all those items right now. And just like I don't know that I want to buy the police cars right now. So can that money, if it's advertised now for one thing, can it be moved into another pot later in 20 days when we talk about this?
So if we're advertising it by bucket, so we listed out the specifics, but we're advertising it on a category level. So as long as it's within the category, you can move it around. And I believe you can move up to 10%. You can make an adjustment up to 10% without re-advertising the budget. And I'll have to look at that, and I can look at that in just a minute. Maybe if the solicitor's on, he can be looking that up while we're talking, but I believe it's 10%.
Well, for instance,
so we can move that.
That is correct.
Okay. We can move within the category without any problem, or if we go outside of the category, we can increase by 10%. So that would be the big question if you want to change something. If you're going to eliminate something and you decide you don't want to purchase something like, let's say the police cars, or let's say there's some piece of public works equipment that you don't want to fix or don't want to purchase in 2021, that you can do and make that decision basically at any time. But if you choose to do it within the budget process, you can do it at the budget process and take that out, and that's fine.
Yeah, because I think that's what Ed's asking. I think that's what Leonard's asking. They're looking for money. Maybe Ed's looking for less money to be spent. Maybe Leonard's looking for money to be spent in different areas. And if that's the case, we can do that in the meeting in 20 days. That's fine. For the next meeting, that whatever that time frame is, I have no problem, because we could beat this till the cows come home. But I think there's some other areas where people want to see money allocated that might not be the same way as it was presented tonight, in my opinion.
Well, if we're talking significant monies, we probably should talk about it this evening before we advertise. So, but I'm asking the question so I understand. The thing that I think Mr. Altieri was talking about, or at least I've heard him say, and I don't know if he said it here at the meeting tonight, but was potentially putting some more money. I think we talked about the 600,000 to the
Open space.
Open space. You could do that outside of the budget. You could do that as an end of the year adjustment with monies that are in the fund balance, because we're going to ask you to commit monies at the end of the year. We always do as part of our fund balance policy, which we have to do in order to be able to do the audit in 2021 for 2020. And so if you want to do that, if you let us know what that is, we'll have that all a part of that as we go forward. If it's actually spending the money on something specific, then we would need to do it, particularly if it's going to happen within the first 3 months of 2021, because you cannot make a budget adjustment within the first 3 months of 2021. You can make one after that, but you can't make it during, at least you can't increase during that time. We made the decision to put things on hold. You can do that. But to do an increase, you have to wait until after I think it's after the end of March.
That's fine.
All right, so what's the board's pleasure?
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the advertisement of the 2021 proposed budget as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve advertisement of the 2021 budget as presented. Any further questions or discussions from members of the board on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor of advertising the budget, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on, item 15.2, consider approving the mailing of a letter to all residents related to the draft zoning rewrite and the proposed adoption schedule. I think we're all aware of this, but perhaps Mr. Nishu can again refresh our memories.
So just a couple quick things. One is the schedule for this is changing a little bit. We had thought we were going to be doing this in November at the Planning Commission meeting, and then again, potentially in December, and then being before you in February. Having talked with a consultant this afternoon, I think we're probably looking at a January before the Planning Commission, maybe February, and then before you in March. So with that in mind, I still would like to be able to do the letter in December. But we're looking at about probably about $7,100. It would be basically a letter to explain it, and then I'd like to include the proposed zoning map as well as the current zoning map, so that people have an understanding of what's being changed, at least the visual. And then hopefully that would get them to go to the website to look at all the details. And it is voluminous. I'm guessing that this zoning document's going to be probably close to 1,000 pages. And so it's a big document. Anyway, the purpose of what's on your agenda this evening is just to authorize me to continue to move forward, putting the letter together. It probably won't go out until December now, because I wanted to be a little bit closer to the time in which we're going to be doing this. But we didn't want to be doing this the week between Christmas and New Year's. We didn't think that would get the best turnout.
I think you're right on point there. And certainly whatever information we can do to make sure this gets out to all the residents, this is a sweeping change to the zoning code, then yeah, we got to take whatever steps are necessary. One question I have is just to make sure that the board is going to see what's going to go out before you send it out.
Absolutely.
Any board members have any questions on this? If not,
What's the cost here, Steve?
Up to about $7,100, I think, is what we're at right now.
Okay.
We literally just got it while we've been meeting tonight. So.
Can you adjust the screen, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, John, to approve the mailing of the letter for, the estimate of $7,100 for the zoning rewrite.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
This was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve item 15.2. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 15.3, consider approving the 2021 stray contract with Brandywine Vet Hospital. This includes a monthly increase. Mr. Neese, please enlighten us.
I'm not sure how to let you on this one. So this is a contract that basically we've decided that we have to have,
Right.
that if we have a stray, we have something that we have to do with the stray, and we don't have anything on township property that we can do with taking care of a stray. So we have an agreement with the Brandywine Veterinary Hospital to do that. They are proposing a $15 a month increase just to allow them to be our provider. And they are proposing $5 a day increase for each time we have an animal that we pick up that's a stray and take over.
And if
We
we
try
say
to
no to the
recover-
increases,
Excuse me,
and if we say no to the increases,
then we need to find another provider to provide that service.
I
so
think there
move
was-
for approval. I'm making a motion.
Second.
You're moving to approve it?
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve item 15.3. Mr. Neese, just roughly, how many strays are we talking about a year?
Four or five, probably.
Okay,
And then if we find the owners, we charge the owners the money, correct?
We charge the owners for the daily part. We do not charge back for the monthly part.
and as I read the
Right. No, I
contract,
get, but yeah. But if you find it's Mrs. Smith's dog and it was sitting there for 2 weeks, then she's gonna pay the fee for the stay. That's
when I
fine.
read the contract, it's less than $1,500 a year for the
Yeah.
monthly service.
Yes.
You're not gonna find anybody do it any cheaper.
Yep.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? All those in favor of approving item 15.3, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item is discussion about adding fire hydrants at the southwest corner of Route 252 in Gradyville Road, as well as one near the bridge on Gradyville Road. I mean, I don't know how fire hydrants could be a bad idea, but Mr. Neese, perhaps you can explain this to us.
So if I just pulled up the map, and so we're looking at a hydrant being somewhere in this area where my mouse is, if you can all see that.
Right?
So, I mean, the reason for that is because there is a cost of the monthly or the quarterly fee that we have to pay for hydrants. So I just want you to know we're increasing that. At this point, we're reviewing the one down by the bridge a little further. That we really feel strongly about moving forward with the one here at this corner, just because Aqua's getting ready to do the work and is going to be tearing up the road anyhow, just after we paved, which we're so thankful for. And so I know, it's like, how do you not know these things? But they are going to be going in, and so we thought this would be a good time to go ahead and get that done, since they were going to be out there and doing the work.
So
So
that
where-
all adds to the monthly fee. There's no cost to install it, correct?
My end, I believe that's the case. George is on. I don't know if George can speak.
He previously said he was having problems with his microphone, which is why he didn't get a chance to speak before.
Yeah, I don't know if he's,
So where is this going to be, on the church side or the other side?
it's
The-
actually on the other side
Where the house is?
where the house is.
Okay.
But
What
it
is the-
is on, right now, the closest fire hydrant is actually on the east side of 252, which would be a challenge to have to be doing work on Gradyville, houses on Gradyville Road.
What is the monthly fee? What are we talking about, cost-wise? I mean, is it $5, $3, $10?
I think it's a little bit more than that, but it's, I'm gonna phone a friend.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea because we're paying $86,000. So I don't know how many fire hydrants that equates to.
Hey, George. Do you have any idea, one, is it gonna cost us anything to put the hydrant in? Okay, so is there gonna be time for us to make a decision at the next meeting? Yes. Well, I mean, like, if we don't know if there's a cost, that's what I'm looking for. If there's no cost, that's X. Do you know what it costs per quarter to pay for a meter? What it roughly is for 1 meter for a hydrant, I mean? Okay, so the hydrants run about $75 a quarter each. And we don't, and George isn't sure about the install. If you would want, you could pass this, assuming that there's no cost. And if there is a cost, we would have to come back to you. Hold on just a minute.
That's a good way to do it.
It's $300 a year for that fire hydrant.
Yes.
What's the board's pleasure?
Right. George just made me a reminder that fire hydrants are paid by an assessment of the homeowners that live nearby.
Well, it's the board's pleasure. Do we want a fire hydrant there?
If it's
I'll make,
safety, if it's required for safety,
Yeah.
and I say we put it in.
I would agree with
I'll-
that.
I second that. If that's your motion, Mike, I second.
Yeah. I make a motion, we go forward with the fire hydrant installation.
Assuming there's no cost for the installation, correct?
Right, yes,
Yeah.
correct, correct.
Okay. All right, well, a motion was made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Partridge to proceed with the installation of a fire hydrant at the southwest corner of 252 and Gradyville Road, provided there is no cost for the installation. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Last item under new business is discussion about Connect the Dots proposal. I was never very good at connecting the dots, but perhaps you can enlighten us, Mr.
So, Mr. Chairman, earlier tonight, you had a presentation from Gather in the Circle. And as I shared with you, Linda McIsaac is going to be leading the area for a 5-year period. And she's been the one that's kind of heading all of that up and leading us through that process. In the process, she's been able to go out and find a grant for $7,500 that requires a match of $7,500 to help cover the consulting fees going forward for 2021. And it is in the budget. We have $20,000 in the budget to help with Gather in the Circle. So $7,500 would come out of there. We would then have $7,500 grant. So we've added that in on the revenue side. So that is in the budget. I just wanted you to be aware of that. If there was any concerns you have, I would suggest that we actually pass everything when you pass the budget. But I wanted to just make you aware that this is what is going on, and that's the purpose of what this is for, is to help with that. And the committee's doing a great job. They're working really hard. It's been a very tough year with COVID to try to figure out how to do anything, but they spent time really looking at how to go forward, and they've been very creative in that. And I do think it's important, not only for all the things that Linda talked about, but also for, just the fact of building a sense of community in the town and a sense of culture for who we are. And I would defer to Ms. Roberts-Lightcap if she would have anything, because she also serves on that committee.
Right, and it would help along with the progression. Since we've got momentum with this committee, there are plans in place for events, and Connect the Dots is out of Drexel University, and they help to put together these placemaking events and help to facilitate design. So they're very helpful with that. And in fact, Kirsten, who worked for the Delaware County Planning Commission, she worked with us on the zoning rewrite at first. In the beginning, she's now with Connect the Dots. So there's a lot of people that, there are still a lot of I don't know how you would call it, but a lot of symbiotic work going on. So I think it's a good way for us to move forward. And we didn't spend the money, unfortunately, this year for the events that were planned. But there's committed people to this.
So Tina, are we just looking for a direction from the board, or do we need an official action? Do you know?
There will be a need for an official action. I'm as long as you are all in a just general agreement, I'll let Connect the Dots know that we're moving forward. And that once we pass the budget, we will look at we'll look at doing the agreement and also doing the piece for the grant.
I think that's a
Do it
good
all at one
idea.
time.
Obviously going to want the solicitor to review the agreement, but I
Mhm.
think this is a great idea. I mean, it's a no brainer if you ask me. We've got to budget it and we're getting it matched half of the fee. Well, it sounds like it's a good idea.
I'm in favor.
Yep.
Okay. I have enough to move us forward and to help get everything
Hello.
finalized so we can get it before you.
All right, great. We have nothing listed under old business. Under resolutions and legislative action, we have two things. The first is consider approving resolution 2020-31, which is a tree revitalization grant request, 25% match not to exceed $5,000. Mr. Partridge, do you have a copy of this resolution?
Yeah, I have it, John. Resolution number 2020-31. Resolution for grant proposal, whereas the Township of Newtown, Delaware County, Pennsylvania recognizes the importance of trees and the role they play in maximizing the quality of life for township residents, and whereas trees reduce the negative consequences of stormwater runoff, improve air quality, reduce ambient temperatures. Trees also increase township aesthetic and have positive economic benefits, and whereas in support of these benefits, Township of Newtown, Delaware County, Pennsylvania desires to be considered for a tree vitalized grant, and whereas the township will submit a proposal to the Pennsylvania Horticulture Society, and whereas any grant funding received will be matched by the township, and whereas if the grant is secured, the township authorizes up to $5,000 for the project, $5,000 for the project. And be it resolved that the town supervisor of the Township of Newtown, Delaware County, Pennsylvania, in regular session assembled on the 28th day of October 2020, so hereby approve this resolution. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap to approve resolution 2020-31, the tree vitalization grant submission. Does anybody have any questions on this particular motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, next is consider approving resolution 2020-32, which is the PennDOT multimodal transportation grant application. Mr. Partridge, you want to do the honors again?
Sure. Resolution number 2020-32, resolution for grant proposal. Be it resolved that the Township of Newtown of Delaware County hereby request a multimodal transportation fund grant of $2,220,988.70 from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to be used for the implementation of new trails, sidewalks, and pedestrian crossings in the middle of Newtown Township to develop a connected multimodal trail loop and improve pedestrian safety. Further resolved that the applicant does hereby designate Stephen Neese, Township Manager, as the official to execute all documents and agreements between the Township of Newtown and the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation to facilitate and assist in obtaining the requested grant. And that's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Which is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve resolution 2020-32. That's an outstanding amount, and boy, I hope we get it.
Yeah, just real quick, Mr. Chairman, I think everybody knows, but just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is going with the other grant that we applied for to try to create that loop.
Well, that'd be awesome. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have no additional business listed. Well, I'll try. Would any board member like to make a comment?
Yeah, I have a question. Mr. Neese, are we going to be looking at getting this UNO ordinance on the table no later than January this year? I believe we lost about $25,000 to $30,000 in income this year because we don't have this in place. We've been talking about it for 3 years, and again, we're always looking for money. It's a great opportunity, and it's also a safety issue. When houses change ownership, a lot of these older homes don't have smoke detectors built in. They don't have GFI outlets. It's really a concern, and I think we just, this year probably wouldn't have been a good year to implement it anyway due to COVID, but I'm seeing no reason why we shouldn't get this on the books for January.
I will work with the solicitor on it. We have a draft. We just have kind of had it on hold.
Yeah,
Once
I'd
you
like-
guys finalize that, if you could share that with the board, that'd be great.
Yeah.
as I sit here in an older house that does not have hardwired smoke detectors or GFI out.
Well, yeah,
Guess
well,
I'm never
a
moving.
lot of other homes that are, you look at them and they're real, somebody's lived there for 50 years and they were fine, but now you have a family moving in with a lot of little kids. It's a whole different dynamic.
No, I don't disagree.
And then I have two other things, John, if I could.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Is that all right?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So we have all these stores going in on these nice new roads. And I want to know I know Andy only does the connection if it goes into the house. So I know it's McCumbie's people. And we have all these brand new roads and we have nice oil puddles in a lot of places from leaky equipment. And I'm wondering if somebody is making sure that if these roads deteriorate, that we have some kind of bonds in place for these guys working. It seems to be 2 or 3 guys working in my neighborhood anyway. And we just spent a lot of money and I'm really getting concerned because they don't sweep up after themselves. So there's dirt all over the road and they leave oil behind because they have equipment that leaks. And my concern is we just spent all this money and this is going to be an issue moving forward. So I want to know if we have somebody that can look at this or get McCumbie and to enforce that if they have leaky equipment, they got to put a bond up. Because again, I'm not going to be paying for new roads again in 2 years in a development where we just spend a ton of money. It's crazy. And I told him that I won't let any of those guys on my property for that exact reason unless they go in the easement because all their equipment leaks. So I don't know if that's something you want to have to talk to McCumbie about and have Andy and McCumbie and Zach have a conversation. But I mean, if his guy, Dave Porter is out there or his brother's out there, Herbie, whoever's out there should be looking at the road when it's said and done, they're all gone because and that's the other thing. Like these guys just park their equipment on the street overnight. And if they don't have a job for a few days, it stays in the same place till they have another job. And I don't think that's the intention. I think it's reasonable to say if you're going to be working there the next day, fine, leave it. But I don't think it should be sitting there all weekend. Again, we have equipment and then you put your equipment in the road on one side and you park a car on the other side. You can't even get a fire truck through. I think that's just not right.
Okay.
Mr. Neese, can you get a formal response back from our sewer engineer on this issue?
Yes.
And I guess I know there's certain regulations about parking equipment during construction project, but we also have regulations about parking unlicensed equipment. So,
Yep.
They've got a license, a backhoe that's, got wheels and a license. That's one thing. But if they're parking tracked equipment or things like that on the road that don't have licenses overnight, then that should end. They need to find a staging yard for that equipment and move it in and out every day.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, my concern, John, is the deterioration of a brand new road. Road's not even 6 months old.
It's
That's
a
my
valid concern. Asphalt is a petroleum-based product, so when you put oil on it, you are damaging the road. So yes, it's a valid concern. What else did you have, Mike?
And then the dirt on the roadways too. We should. I don't know. Again, I don't know if they have to even get a contractor's license to work in town. These guys. I don't know if you guys require that of them, or because they're doing stores, they're just falling under the MUA. But again, these guys are leaving all kinds of dirt on the roadway when they leave. Yeah, and then our sweeper. I mean, they can get a hand sweeper. They get a guy with a broom, a guy with a shovel. I mean, I don't know. I just where I work.
No excuse for dirt on the road. They should be sweeping up. There's absolutely no reason
Yeah.
that they're leaving dirt on the road. So,
and it's all the same guys too, John. It's the same 2 or 3 guys working and doing this work. It's not like there's 100 different guys coming.
right, Mr. Neese, I think we need something written or something back from McCombie's people that say how they're addressing this and how they're going to better address this in the future.
Yep.
That's all I have, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any other supervisor comments? All right. Moving on, next item on the agenda is public comment. This is general comments for items that are not on the agenda. We've unfortunately managed to chase pretty much everybody away. I guess we were too long-winded, but there's still 2 members of the general public left. Do either of those members have any comments? Seeing no hands raised, we will then move on and adjourn. Our next meeting is Monday, November 9th. Same time. Hopefully we'll start on time. Wish everybody a happy Halloween. Please make sure you go out and vote if you haven't already done so. And thank you for joining us this evening. That's it.
All right.
Everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Good night.
Night.